I'd like to congratulate you on the launch of your 10th sustainability report. It was actually, when I got the letter, I was actually quite excited to accept quickly because I was here to launch your first sustainability report back then. Then I was still leading the Kenyan Association of Manufacturers, and Safaricom had recently joined the Global Compact the Kenya Global Compact chapter, and that's a conversation we were starting with companies in Kenya. So it's exciting to see not just that you have kept on the journey, but you're also inspiring others along the way. You mentioned in your remarks that Kenya Breweries, so East African Breweries, launched their report recently. We've also visited and had other companies launch their reports, and I think it's a really good practice that Kenyan companies are starting to invest in, and the challenge is to others who haven't, to measure their footprint, to measure the impact of their business across across the entire ecosystem, because as mentioned before, whatever is not measured doesn't count, and a lot of these things count. But I also want to congratulate you for demonstrating that this journey of sustainability, and we need to, I think we need to banish a lot of this myth that the journey of sustainability is costly, and that there is a tension between profit and purpose. If there is anything that we learn every day when Safaricom announces its numbers, is that it's an extremely profitable company. So this sustainability journey has actually come at great benefit to the shareholders and to, obviously, to the employees of the organization. There is actually no tension. And I was trying to search, because I've been involved in this for a while, since the time we joined the Global Compact. I still try to find evidence of companies that went bust because of making this decision. I know many companies that have gone bust. Some of them are fairly famous, but I haven't met companies that have made conscious decisions to walk this journey, to focus on expanding shared value, that have actually gone bust. In the context of COVID last year, I visited a company, one of our small, it's not a major company, but it's in furniture. But it actually told us that as a result of their model of working with others along their value chain, rather than manufacturing everything and delivering to customers, but working with small fundis who would then work with with eventual customers, they actually expanded, in the context of COVID, they expanded their revenue by more than 25%, which was not the case for others. So that sustainable journey is the journey that we suggest and we want to recommend to many companies. Another example I'd like to give comes from work back then, more than 10 years ago, when the Association of Manufacturers were encouraging companies to focus on reduction of their energy consumption as part of a UN, actually it was a UN fund, I think it was a World Bank, GEF-funded project on reduction of CO2 emissions, and we'd signed up to this project, and one of the works we needed to do was undertake audits with companies and suggest to them ways in which they would reduce their CO2 emissions. We were met with a lot of skepticism, because the narrative then, and the narrative that still prevails to this date, is that global warming, the countries and the companies responsible for global warming are in the developed north, and we don't have a significant CO2 emission footprint in the South. Then we decided we needed to turn the narrative to say you're not just reducing carbon emissions, you're saving yourselves money. Once we changed the narrative in that way, the number of companies that were recruited and agreed to do energy audits increased. The second thing, and I think that's where the measurement comes in, is that the association introduced the Energy Management Award, where we would recognize the companies that had saved themselves the most as a result of the journey they did in energy efficiency. I'm glad that the association has kept that award going, but year on year, we noted that several companies were saving themselves more than 1 billion shillings cumulatively in unnecessary energy costs. And as we reported on that, we actually as an association had to remember that it was a CO2 emissions project. So we also need to not just report the amount of money saved, but we also needed to report on the CO2. But the point I make here is that this journey of efficiency, the journey of sustainability, the green journey, the examples we have all heard today are not journeys that cost you money. They look like that, but they don't cost you money. So I want to thank you for the journey that you've walked, the inspiration you've become, and we'll continue to encourage you to walk this journey. As Steve mentioned, a lot of the stuff you're doing resonates a lot with government. We engage a lot with the private sector through our regular dialogue, so we also get feedback from yourselves as to how the regulatory environment and other related measures can support the journey of companies like Safaricom. But we also use this opportunity to challenge companies like Safaricom and others to also provide greater leadership in also pushing the regulatory frameworks in dealing with societal challenges. Steve has talked a lot about what I intended to say about some of the challenges and spaces you have in partnering with government. You have continued and you demonstrated that. The partnership in the context of movement, of relief, and movement of support, financial support during COVID, your partnership in programs such as Kazi, Mtaani, and others, programs where we worked together last year to reach vulnerable communities, and the cash transfer, basically being the backbone of our cash transfer program, continues, and it is appreciated. The support to small businesses is also a furtherance of government efforts to build up the SMEs. And I'm certain that out of your own reach out, even if it is things like Pochi la Biashara, before long you will be telling us that that has become a new growth center for your own business. So this partnership is going to be critical and support, and we want to encourage you to explore other products that can support small businesses. But as I end, I would also like to, as Steve said, draw your attention to where we might require more leadership from companies such as yourself in dealing with societal problems. One thing that comes to mind is the issue that the UN Secretary General referred to in his comments last week. And I think that's a challenge that's going to many tech companies. Part of our challenge with dealing with COVID-19, recruiting people, recruiting citizens to take the vaccine is really the challenge of fake news. And the Secretary General referred to it and called it, we're dealing with an infodemic. We're dealing with a pandemic, but we're dealing with an infodemic. And the media in which this fake news and related and unsafe, unscientific information is passed is through networks and program platforms such as your own. And I think the challenge that has been given to us and given to companies is that we would also like to see your leadership in helping us in this transmission of correct scientific information. Cybersecurity is something we've talked a lot about, but I think that even the management of the content that is carried in your networks becomes an issue. And I think there's an invitation being given to tech companies to begin to be part of the solution. Companies have led in this sustainability journey. I mean, in fact, you're probably doing a lot better than sometimes policymakers are doing with regard to the decisions that you're making. But in this regard, and it becomes a major global security challenge, the challenge of fake news and incorrect information, and its capacity to compromise in the rollout of well-deserved government programs and societal programs. I think for me, it has, as the Secretary General calls it, has become an infodemic, and we do need to see some leadership from companies such as yourselves in dealing with it. But especially in our context, and we speak especially as we prepare for a seminal election in 2020 in Kenya. We all know the role that fake news and ethnic mobilization and ethnic strife contributed to the challenges and the insecurities that we faced, and actually the violence in 2007. And I'm certain that you are also aware of this. So companies such as Safaricom require a safe and stable environment. And you're actually being invited to also become parties in this regard. The amount of information we get, I like what you're doing these days in warning us about sharing our PIN information, dealing with all these guys who cold call us from committee and other places, and try and take advantage of unsuspecting persons. I like what you're doing in supporting us with ensuring that all the SIM cards in the country are well documented and registered. But I think it's also an invitation for tech companies to become part and parcel of maintenance of peace as we get into campaigns. And even if it requires regulations, Steve, we used to talk a lot about that. Sometimes it's actually proposals of regulations that come from business that can support us in realizing these necessary social outcomes. And a government will be willing and able to listen to you if you can propose regulations in this regard. So even as you walk the journey and as we continue, I think the challenge that is being brought to companies such as yourselves is this part of building a company that has that is successful both in terms of its economic and revenue outcomes, gives you an added challenge and responsibility of also building a company that supports societal ideals and stability and our own security. So I thank you. I'm happy to have been here for your 10th report launch. We're glad you're making these strides. Continue in that journey, but challenge yourselves in increasing what else you measure in terms of your outcomes. And some of the suggestions from both the UNDP and ourselves are things I would like to see you consider as you go forth. Well done, and enjoy the rest of your journey.